Hey there, good morning, friends. It's Tuesday, October 15th, and I'm Rob, that developer dad. And last week, I think we got the NPC generator um, to to minimum viable product level. It's got sufficient security, it's deployable, it's maintainable, and functional. Um, and it's time to start thinking about how we're going to sell it and administer sort of the business processes around running a software as a service product. So in order to do that, we're going to need all kinds of things. We're going to need a payment processor. I think I'm going to go with Lemon Squeezy. They're looking like the leader of the pack in terms of the functionality that I need. They're a little pricier than, say, Stripe, but Lemon Squeezy actually is now owned by Stripe, but they do things like calculating, collecting, and submitting sales tax on my behalf. Um, and that's paid for with the higher fees and everything like that. And that's a lot of code and research and legal goop that I don't have to worry about. They also take care of my PCI compliance, because if I'm accepting money from people, if I were doing it myself, I would have to write all kinds of stuff to securely hold their credit card information, keep it encrypted, keep it safe, keep the bad guys out of the database, all of that stuff. And by going with a service provider like Stripe, Lemon Squeezy, I'm sure there's others, PayPal, I think I could use for that kind of thing. Um, it means I don't have that burden. And the cost isn't terrible. It's a per transaction thing. So I don't mind paying that if it takes all of that work off of my plate. Now, it does mean that I've got to do a little bit of fancy footwork to make sure that the systems that control what people are allowed to do, quotas, et cetera, remain in sync with their payment activities. And that means you exposing some webhooks, giving those webhooks a place to call when the message has been validated and verified, things like that. I've never written a webhook before, so that's going to be a fun, interesting thing to do. And for reliability's sake, I'm considering introducing some asynchronous type activities. I haven't fully decided that I'm going to do them yet, but for simplicity's sake, we're not even going to think about the distribution of components or anything like that yet. We're just going to worry about designing how the code in this backend system is going to be laid out. Distributing is really a matter of the details of how each component within the system will communicate with its dependencies, and deployment matters. So we can push that kind of thinking down the road a little way. If we factor these components appropriately, we don't have to really consider how they'll be deployed and how they're going to communicate with each other until later in the build process. So it all starts with the use cases. So let's dive in. So I'm doing a lot of this specification work in GitHub itself. I stood up a new repository and a new project yesterday to hold all of these details. And I started listing some use cases, and I'm looking at them today with a fresh set of eyes. And I'm seeing a lot of implementation details. Like I'm seeing a lot of how and not a whole lot of what. So I think I want to take another kick at this can. I'm going to leave this content here while I improve the use case list, but eventually we're going to remove this and it's going to become details of the actual things that we're trying to do. So let's go ahead and edit the file. This subsystem needs 2. And this is very much a subsystem. This subsystem needs 2. Allow a handle the backend activities, handle the backend tasks that occur when a customer, and let's give that a bullet point, and then we'll give it another bullet point indented, signs up for the first time, renews their monthly subscription, pauses their monthly subscription, discontinues their monthly subscription, at end of current billing period, cancels their subscription with refund immediately. And I'm going to bump that in. Hopefully this will be an exception case. This gets complicated. Cancels your subscription with refund immediately with prorated. So let's say their renewal bills 5 days later, they say, cancel, I want my money back. We're not going to give them the full $10 back. We're going to have to prorate the amount of time between cancellation day and the end of their current billing period. And I believe Lemon Squeezy handles that stuff, as does Stripe. I'm not sure. I'm reasonably sure Lemon Squeezy deals with all of that calculation stuff. Excuse me. Handle the back-end tasks that occur when a customer signs up for the first time, renews their monthly subscription, blah, 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 blah. Okay. It also needs to allow an administrator to, and we'll go back to the start of the line, tab that in. Enter details about the products and subscriptions that are being offered through the store. Oh, that's right. I wanted to grab the table that I created for clarifying the use cases from how details to what details. Commit changes. Here we go. Now I do want to pop over to external systems and just pop into edit real quick, grab this, copy. I'm not actually making any changes. Come in here, do that. Oops. Add a new table row. And I do want the row, the first column in the row, each row to be bold. So we're going to add the markdown tags for that. 2 stars for bold in GitHub's markdown editor. And just going to cut, paste. This document the store refers to whichever payment processor e-commerce service has been selected. Now, let's pretend for a minute. I'm going with a third party for my e-commerce solution for now. If we get to a point where we've determined that it would actually be cheaper or give us some other advantage to roll our own e-commerce and store and catalog and all of that stuff, we'll make that change. We can always replace the store with something else that we build later. And in terms of this administrative interface, as long as we keep the APIs and interfaces and so on within the administrative system that we're designing here, independent of the API naming and idioms provided by whichever e-commerce solution we go with, then that means that we're going to be able to easily replace them. So throughout our stack, we're going to want to make sure that the component definitions are based on our use cases rather than the idiomatic or opinionated terminology used by the vendor provided services. And that'll allow us a lot more cognitive flexibility and more ability to really swap things out if we need to later. Because at that point, our resource access for external APIs really is just an adapter layer. An adapter and communications layer, I should say. Enter details about the products and subscriptions that are being offered through the store. Most e-commerce services hold this data locally and let us know when a sale is made. This will allow us to automatically provision the resources for customers as they sign up. Oops. I'm going to leave that bullet point indented. For now, we will set up the products and services in the e-commerce service. Set the products and subscriptions, I should say, in the e-commerce service first, then manually add them to our local administrative system. If there's a need to move in the other direction later, we can always build that out in the future. Prepare. I think Lemon Squeezy's email list system has a full UI and API for sending emails to current, past customers, stuff like that. And I don't think there's really any need to build a UI for that inside our administrative app. Allow a system administrator to enter details about the products and subscriptions. Excuse me. Create and manage the AI prompt information that is used in the product for various use cases. Using the product for new, for existing, and new features. For existing features as well as new features as they are added to the system. Let's bump that in. Token consumption used while iterating on prompt definitions and templates must be logged in the token consumption logs and marked as distinct from the product's functions there. Because in the token consumption logs in our database, we actually log not only the number of tokens that were used in the prompt and in the completion, but we also log the name of the function that was used. I don't think I'm logging the content of the actual materialized prompt or the raw output. There's not really any need to take up all that space. I may log that for the R&D stuff, for the prompt development subsystem, so that I can always see what the prompt looked like, what the input data looked like, and what the output looked like. So I can go back over past iterations and kind of pick and choose from what worked well and what didn't work, and so on. So token consumption used. All right. As a matter of fact, I want to go ahead and add that as a bullet point in the allow a system admin too. So, in addition to the token consumption logged as R&D in the system, the prompt engineering feature must also record each iteration of a prompt as it evolves. These records shall include prompt template, any data that is injected into that template, the rendered prompt itself, and the output from the LLM. This will allow, what are you doing, Rob? This will allow the prompt developers to see the effects of iterative changes to the AI prompts as they're made, and provide a history of those iterations. Back up by one. When an LLM function has been under development, has been deemed worthy, should be deployed to the a different storage table in the database from which the LLM manager in the product will read in the available functions. Need to be we'll need to be careful with this because if we change the required parameters in the prompt template without changing the code that calls that AI function, very bad things will happen at runtime. Okay. Let's manage the groups, define an MS entry that are used to control access to different areas the DM is familiar. Manage memberships in those groups. Manage system local data about the products. I'm going to say these are how details. Manage user accounts when the DM's familiar. Allow same account manipulations as provided by the store. Send email notifications to the users using those features provided by the store. All right. I want to... Oh, how do we do... Oh, I believe the markdown to do a strike through is the tilde. Let's find out. Oh, yeah. Good. Good, good, good. And I goofed up my headings. I think those need spaces. Preview. Here we go. This subsystem needs two. These are the how details. Good. And I'm going to go ahead and commit these changes. Adds a list of use cases that do not include the implementation details that I added yesterday. Commit changes. All right, I am going to take a very short intermission because I'm very hopped up on many cups of coffee, and coffee has consequences. So I'll be right back, and then we'll move on to starting to see how these different use cases are going to flow through the system that we have designed. Just how they'll flow through the static design, I should say. Pardon me. I shall be right back, just 2 minutes or less. I apologize. All right, I'm coming back. I apologize for that. Being a person of a certain age, coffee tends to come back alarmingly fast. All right, so this is our static design, and it's SaaS admin static design. Rename that. Okay, I want to duplicate this slide, and we're going to rename this use case flow. Rename use case flow new customer. Rename. SaaS admin system. I want to change this text. New customer. All right. I'm not going to worry about these because the use cases are all going to be manifested. All of these processes are going to be manifested starting at the API. So let's just pull these out of here. Just delete those. And oh, that was a mistake. Pardon me. Goodness. All right. So when a new customer signs up, and right now I'm considering exactly one subscription with or one subscription tier, actually two, but the higher tier is personal invite only and doesn't really give more functionality within the app, but gives more access to me. So that subscription tier may not, well, it may exist in the e-com site, but it's going to be like a special thing. So when a new person comes to the site, I don't want to use a diagram for this yet. I feel like I should come back here. And add a file, use cases / new customer signup.md. New customer signup. When a person signs up for the first time. ... Just because the Gen X ellipsis drives younger folks crazy. And I need 2 asterisks there to make it bold. There we go. Let's preview. Okay. What are you doing, Rob? There we go. 1. I think that's how we do a numbered list in markdown. Person navigates to site. 2. Person clicks on sign up. 3. Create login and user profile with identity provider. MS Entra. Now let's make sure I've got my list correct. I don't. All right, I need to look that up because I can't remember. Markdown numbered list. Excuse me. Goodness, this cough is annoying. Linked images, bullet lists, numbered list. Ah, it's 1 dot. Okay. And then I can mix. Groovy. All right, now let's preview that. I want to make sure I've got it right. Pretty. MS Intra. Did I grab the right glyph? That silly kitty is being a goofball behind me. She is full of beans. All right. Need to set up other identity providers like Facebook Meta, Google, Apple, etc. Entra will behave as the local store for users. It takes care of getting the necessary info from those other providers via OAuth. What are you doing, doofus? There we go. 4. Pardon me. Create login and user profile with identity provider. App. Sets. Creates a checkout session with ecom service via API post with customer details. And product details. Ecom service replies to API call with a cart URL for this purchase. App loads the URL in a new window or overlay, if that's easy. Five. Jinkies. If successful, e-commerce transaction is successful, and let's bigify that, or not bigify it, but there we go. Now I want to preview this, make sure it looks decent so far. Goodness gracious, Kitty, you are full of beans. You're just a loony tick today. She's adorable. It's our babyest of the voids, although she's getting to be a big girl now. She's like probably, I don't know, not quite a year old at this point. She's adorable. If e-commerce transaction is successful, okay, cool. What's this complaining about? I don't know. Whatever. If e-commerce transaction is successful. One. E-commerce service will send a, I don't know, purchase event. Need more details from e-commerce API docs via webhook. Webhook verifies the sender of the message, validates the data, data format. It doesn't, all it's going to do is validate that the data is well formed. It's not going to validate that the data is correct. That comes in another step, because these webhooks aren't going to have access to the data that we would use to verify correctness of the incoming sign up request. Validates the data format. If checks pass, event data is forwarded to the backend system, to the administrative API. we're going to assume that we're still on the happy path here. Admin API receives the event data and validates the inbound data for correctness, i.e., does the product exist? How could we get into a situation where we get a notification from our e-commerce service that somebody purchased something, and when it gets into the system, we discover that the product code doesn't exist in the system? Really, the only way that I can imagine that that would happen would be either I was a dummy when I was setting up the product and synchronizing it into the system, or B, somebody tampered with that payload. And in that case, I'm not sure. Well, if somebody tampered with the payload, that would invalidate the hash. That would invalidate the verification token that's going to be sent to me in the webhook call, because the hash in that validation token would be different from what I do when I go to validate the token. See, when you're, as I understand it from the API documentation that I've read about building these webhooks, what Lemon Squeezy does is they will first I negotiate with them a unique key, and it doesn't have to be cryptographically secure or anything like that. It's just sort of a what's the password that you would say out loud in public on a crowded bar kind of thing. And then in addition to that key, it creates a hash, which is really just sort of a glomped together and sort of randomized string using some cryptographic algorithm of that key value and all of the data in the message, in the event message. So if somebody tampers with that data in the message body, when I perform the same hashing operation on my side, those verification tokens aren't going to match, and I can reject that transaction back. So validates the inbound data for correctness. I do want that step to be accounted for, but I haven't thought of the unhappy paths that can happen during this phase. We need this phase in place, even though we haven't imagined the scenarios where this data would be invalid yet. Just because we can't imagine the scenarios doesn't mean scenarios like this don't exist. 4. And guess what? I gotta get rid of more of this coffee. So I'm going to go back into be right back mode for just a minute, take care of that, and then I'm going to come back and I want to finish fleshing out this use case, these use case details in plain language, but quoting, the services that I know about because I'm already using them in the product. I'm going to finish that out when I come back, and then that will be a productive morning session. So please bear with me for just one more short break, and I'll be right back again. All right, coming back. Here I am. Sorry about that. So we validated the inbound data for correctness. This is almost always going to be true, but I want to have the socket, or the not really the socket, but I want to have that step in there because I'm sure I'll come up with scenarios or details that could cause this to be invalid. So we already have an Entra ID, like the object ID. We log in a user profile with identity provider, blah, blah, blah. And as a matter of fact, I missed something. For record the create a new user profile record in the products database. Five, we create the checkout session. Nope. 6. 5, load product details for the customer's selection. And currently there's only one from the database. E-commerce service will send a purchase event. Yeah. Okay, admin API receives the event data and validates the inbound data for correctness. If valid, if subscription is valid, 1, create user subscription record in database. 2, and it's periods, not colons. Create user quota records in database. And let's use consistent capitalization, shall we? Pull this over so that I got more visibility here. Here we go. For this purchase, uploads the URL in a new window or overlay. If that's easy, e-commerce service will send a purchase event. Need more details from e-commerce API docs. Use the event data and validates for correctness. If subscription is valid, create user quota records in not the SATA base, but the database. 3, send a thank you email via the e-commerce service. Send a thank you and getting started email via the e-commerce service. 4, I've already got them. I'm such a numbskull sometimes. Navigate user to known user landing page. Sign the user in and navigate to the known user landing page. That is if the person navigates to the site. If no. So thank you and getting started email via the e-commerce service. Yeah, and that's it. That's all there is to it. Let's commit these changes. And document the steps in the process of a new user signing up for the DM's familiar or any software as a service account. Really? ... Boop. And we commit the changes. Let's take a look. All right. Now I need to come over to projects. Projects, I need to link a project. And this is the admin system. Submit. Here we go. To do. Research the stores. Documentation for unhappy path handling. Let me send this to the top. No, because you're a pain. You're going up to the top. Research the store system we'll be integrating with more fully. You know what? let's come in here and I want to edit this. Things to keep an eye out for in the documentation. What happens when a purchase attempt fails? And it's the first sign up for a subscription product. What does the e-commerce service provide to the SaaS host systems in those events? There. So I've just given myself a little reminder. Research the store's documentation for unhappy path handling. Let's just go ahead and delete that. We don't need it because it's in there. Wait for system administrator to, oh yeah, the prompt stuff. All right. And I'm going to add an item to the to-do list because this falls under the larger thing. I'm also going to resize this. Document the steps in plain English that each use case goes through. This is absolutely in progress. I'm assigning myself. I'm going to convert it to an issue. I'm not going to deal with any of that project management stuff. And pin issue, log conversation, create a branch. Yeah, that kind of bothers me that there's no way to associate GitHub work items with other GitHub work items to like create a story and subtask or step thing. That's really weird to me. I really like having that hierarchy. And labels, I'm going to call it I guess I have to set up new labels. Edit labels. Planning. No. Requirements. Documents. What are you doing? Oh, I was searching. Requirements. Documentation. Create. Architecture. Create. Design documentation. Create. There we go. Now let's go back. Come on, GitHub. Don't be a doofus. Here we go. I thought I converted this to an issue. I did. This is requirements documentation is what this is. There we go. Edit. New customer. Sign up. customer renewal. Pause. Pause, resume. Customer subscription, discontinue. Customer subscription, cancel with prorated refund. And then there are other use cases that I can't remember off the top of my head right now. Those are the biggies. Those are the top priority ones. And got that. This I need to up the estimate on. This is no longer a small. Well, no, designing the architecture is still fairly small. It's and small I consider to be 2, 3, 5 working days. And so far on the architecture part, I've spent about an hour. So this, we'll file it under architecture, list of use cases, set of static design diagrams, manifest of solution products. Yeah, and we're very close to done with this. And documenting these steps in detail like I'm doing is going to help us move towards the detailed design. So let's see here. Can I link this to a repository? No, I can't. You silly thing. Projects. I don't want projects. I want repositories. Here we go. TDMF admin. I should probably rename this repository if I can, because that dumb former president could be an expansion of TDMF, but the DM's familiar admin. All right, we have reached a good stopping point, and I think we can call this a productive session. We've improved the documentation of our use case list, kind of brought some clarity around the what of the system. And, we've kept these notes about how, and we're going to delete these eventually, because these how details are really just sort of mental breadcrumbs for me as I go in and keep working up the detailed use case documentation. And then once we've got our use cases documented, we can start thinking about the entities that these use cases deal with. Like, what are the nouns? And once we have our list of nouns, we'll be able to determine if they are core concepts or details of those core concepts. We'll have verbs, and we'll be able to sort of start mapping those verbs to activities or even the tasks that each activity collects and sequences. Because as we covered yesterday in my sort of architectural thought process diagramming, a process is composed of is a sequence of one or more activities. An activity is a sequence of one or more steps. And a step is just like a single thing that a software program might do. Retrieving a filtered list of stuff, updating a thing, writing a thing to the database for the first time, validating that a thing is correct, calculating values from a collection of things, or calculating some value from a collection of stuff and things and other things, transforming a thing to a doodad, things like that. Those are all steps in my mind. And steps manifest in engines and resource access. Activities are declared, exposed by, and orchestrated by our managers. And of course, our processes are composed of the activities provided by the managers. And these processes are provided by and orchestrated by our administrative API layer, which in some worlds is just a workflow manager. But that's a discussion for another day. For now, I thank you for joining me. I'm that developer dad, and I will be back this afternoon at 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. So until then, happy coding. Take care, everybody.